Welcome to Transforming with Us,
where we talk about
all things trans and queer.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Transforming with Drew, where we talk about everything LGBTQIA and the unique spectrum that we have. And today we have Beau with us. And Beau, would you like to introduce yourself with your pronouns and your orientation labels?
Okay. Yes. So my name is Beau Knowles, and my pronouns are she, her. And even though I am a cisgender female and presenting also very feminine, you would be surprised how often, because my name is Beau, that I like 2 days ago, sir. And okay, it's fine. So, and my orientation is kind of my joke. It amuses me, and but I'm actually not the only one. So I'm previously or currently lead a lesbian social group. And so I had identified as lesbian for a good bit. And since I came out, and I came out in my 30s, and I'm now in my 50s. And so I had been carrying on that for a while. And then I kind of went through a midlife crisis when I hit 50. And I had said, well, hey, I'm just going to go ahead and say that I'm getting ready to go through a midlife crisis. So anything I do for the next 6 months is going to be excused under midlife crisis.
I love that.
And it was a joke because I think I'm funny. And then I proceeded to have a real midlife crisis. I got mad at the person I was dating, and we broke up after 7 years. I got mad at my truck. It kept breaking down, so I sold it. And you know what? I love that dang truck. I miss it so much. So I just I just said, you know what? I want to travel in different circles. I was like, I had a friend who started a transgender group in our town because her partner transitioned, and it grew. It's like, I believe it has somewhere around 700 members now. And I wanted to join it because I was providing resources through my group. And she said, just don't bring any of your lesbian attitude. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What do you mean lesbian attitude? And she said, well, lesbians give us a hard time because we're transitioning. And I'm like, I would never do that. Do you not know me at all? And so I joined the group, and that's how I learned that some people aren't accepting. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, well, I was kind of already, being so crazy during this time of in my 50s. And so I was like, I just told somebody when they said, what's your orientation? And I'm like, hot mess. And my orientation is hot mess. And it just continued from there, where I was interviewed by Smith College. I'm one of the most active activists in my area, and I'm not a marcher, but I'll stand behind you and tell you where, mm-hmm. how to be safe, and these are the rules, and this is what you do for nonviolent marching and so forth. And I'm very much about empowerment. So I had, I was doing that, and I was contacted by Smith College, the women's college. It's pretty big, and they wanted to do a Lesbians of the South oral history project, and so I'm now in the archives for them. And and I asked my followers, I have a little bit of a following. I said, should I say lesbian, or should I say my current orientation is hot mess? And they're like, no, say hot mess. Just say it. And I'm like, well, it's true. And so I did. So I'm actually known as a hot mess at the women's college. Why not? And so, but then a couple of years went by, and I found I found mugs and people had given me like coolers, like drink holders and stuff like that. And I saw a sign one time at a skating ring. The baseball team, the softball team was named Hot Mess, so I put that logo on the top of my Facebook cover. And one of my an older lesbian once said to me, why are you identifying as a hot mess? Like you're taking away our heritage, but the lesbian is disappearing. And I'm like, I'm still a warrior. I'm still very much, a woman loving woman. I'm just a hot mess. And then I started Googling it because I'm like, maybe I'm not the only one. And then it turned up that there was a hot mess baseball team in Nashville. There's actually a HotMessbian blogger and who creates some crazy memes and just like really just a bunch of unique things. And so HotMessbian, I was like, oh, I like that. That works for me. And now I've redefined it as a HotMessbian is basically a woke lesbian. This means that I accept everybody around me. So, and similar to the blogger who posts all kinds of, really out there memes. They're funny. And so I'm also one that's a bit more, wild, I guess you could say. So I'm woke. That's pretty much how I got to a HotMessbian. And really, because I'm a HotMessbian versus just a lesbian, I can travel in the circles that I wanted to be in without as much conflict, because lesbian, unfortunately, should not have as many negative references as it does. I know lots of lesbians that are not going to be mean to anybody or say terrible things, but they may not be, if they're older specifically, they may not be aware of terminology.
Yeah.
And I have learned terminology over time, the way to speak to people, because I have 2 gender fluid children. And one of them came out as pansexual, and I had to look that up twice. And before I really got
Same here.
what that was. And so just over time, I've added to my vocabulary so that I can speak to someone when they enter one of my groups. And I have, I think, 14 Facebook pages. I just have a lot of interests. And so I just post them, different things on different pages. Mm-hmm. And so when someone contacts me, when they start talking to me, the first thing sometimes someone says to me is, what are your pronouns? And to me, this is like what I have a unique way of thinking about almost everything. And so what I think of when someone says your pronouns to me, they're basically asking to dance.
Yeah.
Hello, how do you do? Hold out your hand. What are your pronouns? I hold out my hand and say, my pronouns are she, her. What are your pronouns? And by doing this little dance, we are both saying that we accept each other as we are. And so I do have a lot of friends that are non-binary, and being that I'm in that large transgender group, I offer support in it as an ally. And now one of my gender fluid daughters, has told me that, she understands that, in some areas she's considered transgender. It's all kind of lumped together. Mm-hmm. So that's why I learned the languages. My 20-somethings were like, well, this is what this means, Mom. And this is what this means. And, because I was like, I don't understand this. Over time, I've started looking things up, and occasionally somebody will like get on one of our groups and just do an acronym. And I'll be like, okay, I'm not sure. And so I'll have to like Google it or something and figure out what it is so that I'll know how to talk to that person. The last one that I heard that I really liked was a women's group was saying ladies, and then she said /ladies.
Ooh, I like that. I haven't heard ladies yet.
Dyies. I haven't. I was like, that's awesome.
That's
Where
new.
did you hear that? I like that.
I have not heard that one either, but I'm going to use that one.
Yeah. Well, if it's acceptable, because when I do experience someone that is non-binary, I want to be correct on the terminology I use for them. And so I do ask, if this is acceptable, does this sound right? How is this? I mean, asking, is you just basically saying that you accept them as well. So that's
100% true.
So, and it's odd for me how often I speak to people about terms, and just understanding that by learning someone's terms or their orientation or their gender identity, that you are basically saying without saying, I accept you. That's what you're doing by learning what they're saying. So that's how I've been traveling lately as a HotMessbian in any group I want to join.
I actually love it because before we were recording, you and I were talking about how there's an unfortunate disconnect right now with a lot of lesbians and transgender people, which it's heartbreaking, and everybody does see it. It's not just that. It's not just trans men. It's also the trans women disconnect that we're having. And I think I read an article actually earlier today, and it kind of broke my heart. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick, because it literally blew me away. I've never seen anything like this. Apparently it's new. Okay, so here it is. The Lesbian and Gay Liberation is going to be holding their own lesbian and gays only pride, meaning no bisexual, no transgender people. But then we get a little confused on that, because I think that people tend to forget that there are transgender people who are lesbian or gay. So it's like they're trying to exclude things, but at the same time, it's like, why are you doing this? So it's kind of like a weird backlash, but I want to thank you, because you're like, when you were talking to me about everything, you were telling me, it's like, well, what do you mean? What do you mean that type of lesbian? You weren't aware of that, and said you were just open and accepting. How does it feel navigating being that type of person, seeing all the other people in your community that you used to completely identify with, and now you're a HotMessbian, kind of causing a little bit of problems?
I don't cause any problems.
Yeah, and I say not you, them causing problems.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, them causing problems. How are you navigating all that?
This is let's see. Well, I'll tell you, I've already had that discussion that you're talking about right there, except it was a different article. And what it was a lesbian podcaster was talking about how they want to actually, I think it was the LGBT Alliance, don't quote me, I may not have that right, wanted to remove the T from the LGBT, and they actually were petitioning to become a nonprofit so that they could fundraise.
Yeah, the LGBT Alliance in England. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yep.
Okay. So they were talking about that, and I'm like, we can't exclude the T. I understand, gender is different from orientation. However, I had a small group of women that we had come from a larger group, but we were closer together. It was a Facebook group, and we wanted to be more of a family setting. And because we got to the point where we were saying goodnight to everybody each night before we went to bed, and then it sounded too much like the Waltons, and I would say goodnight, John Boy.
Yes, I remember that.
so except about 200 women. Okay, so with this group, it was like 2014. Guess what happened? It was mainly lesbian, bisexual women, and also pansexual women. And over time, guess what happened? Our friends transitioned. We had some friends that were in our group that transitioned. And it was just like, what are we going to do? Tell them they can't be part of our family anymore? No, we can't. We can't do that. I mean, it's like one of them was a college student taking their med cap to become a doctor. And so we went through everything, like school, oh my goodness, and then residency and all that, and transitioned in the middle of it, met a girl, got married. How awesome is that? You get to share everything. We wouldn't have got to share that if we said, well, now that you're a man, you can't be in our group.
Yeah.
Is that so? So it's really just each situation is different. Each time it comes up, we have a discussion about it. I'll say, this is what I've learned, and this is come down to this, honestly. And I love this quote. I don't know. I saw it in a meme one time. They are allowed to be wrong. It's that you can talk to somebody until you're blue in the face, and they have their opinions, and they're not going to change their minds, unfortunately.
I like that. They are allowed to be wrong.
Yeah, they can just be wrong on it. And a lot of the opinions, I kind of think in my area anyway, when you got the older opinions, and there's language that I didn't know about that I learned about later on, because for a while there I was busy like raising a family, with my partner, and I wasn't in the community as much. I was on the outskirts, because that's what lesbians do, is they get together and then have kids or dogs or cats, and then kind of go on our little way. So I wasn't always in the community, so I didn't know these battles that were going on, and I didn't know that some people wouldn't accept others. I hate to use a trigger phrase, but I didn't know what TERFs were. I didn't. So I had to look that up, and learned about that. And I also didn't know what let's see, what's the other one? Gender critical. And
that one I learned recently too. I wasn't aware of that until recently.
Yeah, gender critical lesbian. Gender critical lesbian, I think is the phrase. So I learned about that recently too. But I think that in most of those instances, I think that was the phrase that they were previously. See, they've progressed too. They were previously radical lesbian feminists, and back in the day, they were activists. And they fought the police, they fought the church, they fought for all their rights, and they fought really hard, and we certainly appreciate them. But there are still times when we need to fight, but not as many.
And I think it kind of comes out of like what you're saying, like there's fighting. It says, I remember, I don't know if a lot of people know the history of what about LGBT even comes from. So for example, I tell people, I was like, well, a transgender person helped spark pride. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yes, well, yeah, she was even killed too afterwards. Like, people don't understand that. But then here's the crazy part is the lesbians used to be outcasted. So it used to actually be GLBT until the lesbians were taking care of the gay men in the hospitals with like the AIDS. They were such big activists. They worked so hard that to honor them, they moved the DL in front of it. So it's like, we needed them, like I see that we needed them. But then they're also forgetting like the transgender community. They also helped uplift what we went through, like creating pride in New York and fighting through everything and going through all that too. It's like, I feel like we're going backwards again. Like we go forward and we go backwards, we go forward and we go backwards.
I think that the views of the elderly, unfortunately, will, they view, any type of view needs to be, fed, to grow. It's like the what I always say about drama with my people and negativity, that those have to be fed. It's like a fire or a flower. They have to be fed to grow. If you don't feed it, if you don't give a fire oxygen, it dies. If you don't give a flower water or sun, it dies. So views that are just by view will eventually end in time. It's really what I feel. I don't feel that they're going to continue.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to go that way. I think it's just going to go out. And really, when I created that business that I created with the resources and so forth, when I saw that the progressive flag was becoming a thing, I changed my business logo to represent a progressive flag. I want to be inclusive, and see, there's no reason for me not to be inclusive. It's really important. And I've got like a thing that when I was first joining the transgender groups and interacting with them, I was actually leading a lesbian social group at the time, and I have a special needs son. And my special needs son was coming to my meetings and eating dinner, and at a gay bar during the day. and the owner was so sweet to him. She would give him the remote of the TV, and he would play on watching TV, watching music videos while we had a meeting, if we were going to have a dance or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really cool. We'd also work on him ordering food there. And one time we went to one of the transgender groups. One of the leaders came to the meeting and was talking to me about various things, and was just so nice to my son. And I was just like, oh, that is so sweet. And one of the other group members for the transgender group was like, I said, well, he was just so accepting. And she's like, of course he's going to be accepting. He just wants to be accepted. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense. So because that is the number one thing with my son, is just being accepted. It's just, he's different, and it's not really awareness is baloney, in my opinion. And I have another child on the spectrum. It's awareness is baloney. Acceptance. Let's go with acceptance. So that's how I got there. Is like it just like.
Yeah,
so,
I'm on the spectrum. I agree with that. We just want, which makes it even harder when you're on the spectrum and transgender, and you're like, just accept me, please. So I get it.
Actually, I know several people
Mm-hmm.
that are on the spectrum. It's like, and they find me and like in events and talk to me, because I'm very patient, and I know how to say certain things, and that doesn't mean I don't sometimes mess up. I do.
Yeah.
So.
I love that. I definitely want to get more into this activism. So you said you started activism, and you've been out for a while now, and you came out in your 30s. Tell me a little bit more about coming out in your 30s and leading to activism.
Well, first, when you come out when you're in your 30s, and if you've lived in the South, most likely you are married, because that's what we do here. We children are raised in the South, you will get married. You're being raised to maybe go to college, but also get married. And so I got married young, and he was my best friend, and he joined the military, and we traveled. It was a lot of fun. We had this joke. I thought he was serious, honestly. He said, if it doesn't work out, we agree that we'll just get divorced. And I'm like, okay. And then at some point I was like, this is not working out. And he's like, you can't get divorced. He's like, I'm happy. And I'm like, I'm not happy. So I think I know so many women that are late bloomers, men as well. Everybody. There's a lot of people that just don't know themselves, when they're younger. They just don't. And so when I did start having feelings for women, I'm demisexual. Didn't know what that was for a while, but it makes complete sense. I always fall for my friends. I fall for people that I can trust. So I kept falling for my friends, and I was married. And so eventually it just came to the point where, we were just so unhappy. He's like, we're gonna have to get divorced. And I had came out to him, and I actually was in the lesbian social group at the time when I came out. And this is why I keep the group active. We don't really meet up as much, but because the day that I was going to tell my husband that I was gay, one of the leaders called me and said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I haven't told him yet." And she's like, "I'll call you back." So I just really supportive. And so that was incredibly helpful. But now when we were trying to get divorced, I began the groups that I was on. I was on some email groups, some Yahoo groups, began to tell me that I could possibly lose custody as being an out lesbian.
I didn't even think about that back in the day in the South. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and there were other parents that had lost their kids. So through the grapevine, the great Yahoo groups and emails, I asked about a lawyer, and I found a lesbian lawyer in a feminist firm, and started filing for custody. He was going to be really generous financially. And he wasn't even going to file for custody. He was just going to let us figure it out. But I was told that you need to protect yourself, because if you start dating, it's going to be a change of circumstance. And then he can file for custody. And I was like, well, that sounds reasonable. I better go that way. So I hired a lawyer. And he took that as drawing a line in the sand. Now we're fighting. And we weren't fighting before. So he hired a lawyer that slithered and fought me like crazy. And I actually, back in that day, you could call HRC and the National Center for Lesbian Rights and get a person on the phone.
Oh, wow. You can't do that now.
I know you can't now, because I've tried to get more information. And I called them, and they mailed me so that was the National Center for Lesbian Rights mailed me a packet. And I've got my fingers pretty wide here, about 2 inches, 300 pages packet of lesbians and a litigation for custody.
Oh, wow.
For divorce. And so it was a big packet of, this is how to get custody of your children. If you're a lesbian, here are the cases, and here is what you need to say, and this is what your lawyer needs to file. And I gave it to my lawyer, and she made copies. And then over the years, I would give it out to other people and make them copies. And I kept it so long. So that was over 20 years ago. That I currently am I'm an interviewee for the archives in our area. The Voices Out Loud project is an LGBTQ history archives for it's the University of Tennessee, and it's the special collection in the library. And I gave the book to them, so they're supposed to be making copies of it. I mean, it's not so much you would think. It's not so much that you would need it now, because laws have changed, and it should be joint custody unless you can prove neglect or abuse. But do you know how many LGBT right now don't have custody of their children because someone said, well, you can't?
Yeah.
They didn't know the law. They didn't know. They were told by, if they didn't have money, they used their ex's lawyer. And that ex's lawyer is going to do whatever benefits the ex, not what benefits the other person. And so it's just misinformation. It's huge misinformation. People are losing their kids in custody because they think that they're wrong. They don't realize. So that was just incredible. So that's how I, came out, was in the middle of a divorce case. but I wasn't the only one. And a lot of the community, a lot of them were divorced.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that's where I met, like about the same time as I'm getting divorced. Of course, I meet my then wife. I had a holy union with her. If you wear a big wedding dress, she's an ex-wife. And even though we weren't legally married, big fluffy bell-like dress.
Oh, that sounds pretty though.
It was pretty, and it was my parents, my sisters were at the wedding. And we had it at Metropolitan Community Church, and it was lovely. So that was, and my divorce included joint custody, and that if anything happened to me, that my ex-husband would continue to allow the children to see my ex-partner the same amount that she had before. So to continue the bond. And I also included that for grandparents as well. That's not typically written into divorces. Many times divorces don't include grandparents. And the grandparents, if something happens to the ex, they don't get to see the grandkids unless the other parent allows them to.
Or they can call grandparent rights.
Yeah. At the time, they didn't have those.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I had to have that. I added that too.
When did you start doing your activism?
Well, so that was when I rolled into Tennessee. So I got into Tennessee about 99, and I started the lesbian social group had a women's dance. And I started marketing for them in the closet, if you can believe it. And I'm just going to go to a women's meeting. It's terrible. And so I just, it kind of started just kind of small. That group kind of went a different way, and another group took over, and that was Girl Group. It's a .com. It was a women's production company. And what they did was they had women's dances. They hosted women's dances, private affairs. And they also did music. They hosted artists. And what I did over time, I was their marketing director and just started collecting information. Okay, this is where you would go for this. This is who you would contact for that. And so I've just been kind of an information girl over time. People would say well, do you know where I can get this information? And do you know where I can get that information? And so it's just gone from kind of there. I did that until 2006, I think. And then I was a Girl Scout leader for a while, and that takes up all your time. I couldn't do both. And then
my dad was put me in Girl Scouts before when I was a kid, so he was a troop leader. That was hilarious. Yeah, he was constantly busy.
That's so cute.
Yeah.
Now, they have scouting now for adults that missed out, and you can.
Wow.
So you right now could go. There is a scouting camp every year for trans men to go. You get to experience things that you might have missed out for Boy Scouts.
Well, that's awesome. My brother was in Boy Scouts. He hated it. I liked it. He'd come home with this book on new knots or something, then I get in trouble for tying him up. And then he's better. He's better at baking than I am because he would do baking with the Girl Scouts. So my dad's better at baking than I am too. So that made sense. But yeah, my stepbrother was in him. He loved it, and he loved my stuff, and I loved his stuff. But he's a good dad. He has beautiful kids. But he's a great dad. He could cook. So.
So I did the scout for a while, and then I homeschooled my son. So I did scouts for 3 years, and then I homeschooled my son, and then that relationship that I had began with ended, and then I became more of an activist. And it's just over time, the girl group director became a board member on the local Pride organization. And when when she took over that role, she's like, Beau, I know you have a ton of contacts. I need your contacts. We need to add them to the Pride Guide. They don't have that much. It would be really helpful if we could have your contacts. And I really didn't have them organized. And I was just like, my children, remember, we're funny. My children are like, Mom's in the mob because Mom can call in a favor. Now, really, a favor is networking.
That's adorable.
I call up as the church. You want a meeting area? I can get you 3. You need a lawyer? I can get you 4. It's just like, you want a realtor? I can get you 20. There's a lot of realtors in my area. And, just like, but the kids not understanding how networking goes, we're like, Mom's in the mob. Mom's like the head of the lesbian mob. It's a joke.
You were the Dawn mob.
I have like mob boss, like they gave me like, like coolers and stuff like that, mob boss on them, cups and things like that. I just like made my Spotify. I believe it's mob boss or mob mom or something like that. I let them make my Spotify. So just like it's all their running joke just because I have this information. So she had asked me for it, but everybody has like at least one horrible breakup, or really rough breakup. It's like it takes you a bit to get over. And so I just wasn't ready to share information. And then time went by, and then I finally opened a Pride Guide and looked at the back section, and okay, I got to help them. They need some help. The information is just all over the place, and it's not accurate. Some of it have closed. So I told them I would update their information, and I wanted to sponsor it. And they said, we don't really allow sponsors. And I'm like, oh, well, I had some feelings about that. And then I'm like, you know what? I work for the greater good. So I'm going to help you anyway. And so I just like started writing stuff down and putting it on the laptop, and they had a print date, go to print, and I had 3 days. I called into work and just made word sheets, of all kinds of information that I had. And I'm like, do you want local? Do you want national? I'm really good because I was in college back in the day and took like word publishing at the time, desktop publishing. The keyword searches that you have today, I have in my head. Yeah. And so I know the words to use to get the things to come up on Google, or on MSN. I know those phrases already to search for things. So I found some things that you wouldn't know are even out there, and so I gave them national information. I gave them mental health, everything that I could find, I gave them, and they published it in their Pride Guide. And so I took it from, I believe, 24 odd entries to about 60. Yeah. And over time, I've tried to update it, but we haven't ever really got to email connect. Their web designer changed, the information changed. And so that's just how people just like over with I have to backtrack just a little bit to go chronological. I took over the lesbian social group in 2015. Now, remember, that's my coming out group. Yeah. When I moved to my area, they had an advertisement in the paper. The lesbian social group is meeting here at this time. That was awesome. That is so the leader was moving out of state, and she said, I'm going to close the web page. I'm going to close the Facebook page. I'm going to turn off everything. And I'm like, wait a minute. And she's like, I've been trying for 8 months to get somebody to take this over. And I'm like, hold on, you can't stop that. That's my coming out group. That's like, it's basically like a lighthouse. It's like you could see it from a distance. And so I took over that group and led it, had meetings on it. We did some dances. Anybody can message that Facebook page and get me. It's like I talk to people all the time on any of my pages. I can be reached on any subject. The only one I really don't answer is like, you're pretty. And it's me.
You're pretty.
I don't answer.
Don't you just love those?
I don't answer those, and I get those all the time on so many different things. So that was 2015. Really like put me back in the game with the lesbian social group and the website and everything. My email's on it. People can reach me there, and that's when I started traveling in the different circles and thought that lesbian was like the HotMessbian came a little bit later. But it's like that I started traveling in the circles and meeting more people. And then I was like, and so it's about 2018, I did that Pride Guide. And then I'm giving out that information. And then also in 2018, one of my friends says, Beau, I want to retire. Can you take over my group? And she's like, just do it on like a part-time basis. Just try it out. Well, I set that group up for scheduled posts, and all of a sudden it's bam, 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 bam. Everybody's talking. There were 1,200 people on the group and nobody's talking. And then I changed it to scheduled posts and started talking to people and interacting with them. And my last Facebook Insight said that I have 1,502 members and 902 were active last week.
That's great. That's unheard of. It's hard to do that in groups, to be honest with you.
So it's really active, but I tell you what, I've had to go to post approval, and what she had was a gem. Let me tell you, she had like a LGBT friendly owned and operated businesses page. It had previously been like a small business, Etsy, yard sale group. Well, I'm a marketing person. Yeah. So I'm like, well, I happen to have a whole bunch of resources that I've collected. Let me add to those. So I started asking the group questions, like, where would you go for therapy? Where would you go if you were transgender and you wanted like a primary care physician? Where would you, so, and then I took those, and Facebook groups allows you to create a topic. You could hashtag now, but back then you would create a topic for each one. So I started categorizing those topics, and now I've got like 32 topics covering all of these different areas. And I've just let them know I run a really tight ship. Let me tell you, we're not going to have a whole lot of opinions. I don't let anybody bully on that page. No hate speech, and I've told them I don't want to know your religion, your orientation, gender, political. You're not allowed to have an opinion. I'm sorry. There's no opinions on this page. This is a business page, but we have all the small businesses talking on there. What's the best caterer? If I had a wedding, what's the best venue? So I've got that page going on, and then I have the resources as well, and I was like, yeah, Pride would love for me to give them new lists. They would. And I've tried to like contact them, and I really don't have time to create new lists, but I do have time to publish it on a website. So I just made an LGBT directory off of my website. So I added it to that, and now all of the organizations, all the nonprofits in our area can go get the information themselves. Someone will say, I need this. I need a youth program. Here is the youth listing. Click on this link and you could see it. It's there for you. I'm not saying that I don't help. I'm an advisor for our Pride, and they can ask me anything. I've created some of their hashtags and told them to get a TikTok. I help them. But I talk about their events. If someone has some clothes to donate, they just started a vocational center. They actually have a brick and mortar location. And so if someone's got something to donate, I'll send them that way, or tell them to call them. But half the time, Pride is like, call Beau. She'll be able to help you. And so that's where my activism is really taken off. I was furloughed in March 2020, like many people. Yeah. And just like I had been an advocate for years. I'd spoken to people via email, Facebook, telephone, text, and all these different ways. And I'm like, I can advocate on a full-time basis. Woohoo! You don't really get paid for that. But, it's like as I was talking to people, I was like, okay, here we are in a situation. I'm putting on my Facebook, all the leaders in our community. This is time for you to lead. It's time for us to lead. We have to lead now. We have to lead our followers, our members, anybody in our various groups. We've got to lead them. And so I began to do this and just advocating more. And then I was like, I could take this and I could create a business with this. And then I wouldn't have to go back to a 9-to-5. Yeah. I could just do this. So I've created the directory and I added a business directory onto it. And then I don't really charge for anything other than the photos. They can sponsor a page.
Yeah.
And that will be able to pay me something for all the assistance that I give. I recently a cleaning company said that they needed to hire someone. And I just wrote a story, put it on Facebook, and Facebook thought that I was hiring. So Facebook started accepting applications for me. And I'm like, why am I getting messages with attachments? What's going on? I honestly thought it was hate. I'm like, oh God, they found me.
No, gotta protect you.
I thought it was the attachments. I was like, why am I getting attachments? I click on the attachments. It is applications for jobs. Oh. And I'm like, so that, how Facebook is about taking something that you said, like you've got something to sell, or you're asking a question and you're not really asking a question.
Yeah.
And on this occasion, so I wrote the cleaner, who's a friend of mine, and I said, hey, I've got some job applicants. Weren't you like looking for somebody to hire? And she's like, no way. And she was like, we were worried about the business. We don't have enough people. And I'm like, I got you 8.
All right, there you go.
And briefly, in my company, I did HR like assistant. Like that, I was a telephone salesperson, and I was also a mentor and a trainer. When you work in sales, that you do multiple things. But they would call me off of the floor all the time to go work in the HR for recruitment. So I would process applications and have them do their little tests and everything on the computer to make sure that they were computer savvy. So I get all these applications and I'm sending them to the owner of the company, and I'm like, I like this one. Just like that. So I'm like doing a little bit of HR on the side. So that just happened
a lot.
It was an accident, but she's like, no way. She's like, I need you. And I'm like, well, that's how the universe works. I
think it does, yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So I just like that, just an accident kind of thing, but in fact, I gotta figure out how to turn it off. I'm still getting applications.
Oh no.
If she needs anybody else, I can get her some more people. There were a couple that were really qualified. I myself really need to hire some kind of writing intern. It would have to be like a college student. Mm-hmm. The way our community is right now, our little town, our little southern, they say red town, because we get so many people that move here from upper northern states. So we have a lot of conservatives in the area. We are booming with LGBTQ. We have so many new programs there. I could write a story a day and not keep up with it. There's programs, there are businesses that are opening up. There's like that. This is like I really feel called to help like LGBTQ youth. And so I found a program just like one day, being nosy on Facebook, found like a person doing a live video for a LGBTQ homeless program, was starting one and was just getting their nonprofit status, got a house and is setting it up. And tomorrow I'm dropping off food for their food pantry, and they will have 3 teens in there before Christmas.
That's amazing.
In Tennessee,
especially that yeah. Just
like so I've already wrote about that, and I created some of their hashtags. So I'm like, just like I'm gonna give. That was a gift in kind where I helped them, with part of my like business services type thing. But it's just so neat to see. Just so many things going on in this area. And that's just, it's kind of crazy because it is the South, and we're often referred to as, we aren't the Bible Belt, we're the belt buckle. That's what they say.
I like it. Belt buckle. I like that for sure. I mean, I have friends in Tennessee. Honestly, I really do. And a few of them struggle and stuff too. It's like, I'm sitting there always trying to help out. I think one of them has like sick and he has like an ear infection. And I'm like, oh, go get some antibiotics. And they can't afford it. I'm like, oh, here's some resources. I'm like sending them resources all the time. So I get it. It's people forget, like, when you're living in the South, how hard it can be sometimes. So, I mean, I grew up in Florida, so I mean, I have my own fair share of issues because it's pretty much a red state. Everybody doesn't think so, but it's very much a red state.
Yeah. Well, you get a lot of the when you've got retirees, retired, people that move to get away from the cold. That's how we get so many people. We've got a ton of people from New York, Wisconsin, Vermont, states like that. They come down the South because they say, oh my goodness, everybody's so nice, but everybody drives so slow. So
I wish people drove slow in Florida. That's crazy. So if anybody wanted to get in contact with you now, where would I send them to?
Well, they can definitely, they can find my email on the website. I'll just go ahead and do my little plug there. It's the knoxlgbtbusinesses.com. And I did, in the LGBT resource section, I am listing national organization as well. Any organization that I think that will help the community, really, we should have more access. It's just a matter of information is segmented, it's in different places. They can email me at knoxlgbtbusinesses.com. They can reach me that way. There is you can even Google my website, and you can like LGBT near me would bring you up if you were in Tennessee. But there's several different ways. If they you could write it in, I guess. I have a buy me coffee. I have a blog as well. Like get like a coffee here and there. I have one member. Woohoo!
Hey, that's better than nothing. I don't have any of those yet. I like it. I definitely, I mean, I love speaking with you, and I know I'm going to want to continue speaking with you so we can help the community grow and stuff and be protected and stuff. Because the whole point of this project is to make it to where it's more normal, where everybody sees everybody and it just becomes more talked about, and everybody sees like the LGBT community, especially the TQIA community is what I call it, more visible, because the more visible you are, the less scary we are, which means the less hate we get. So I really love what you're doing, and I appreciate everything that you're doing. And I definitely can't wait for everybody to listen to this, who are listening now. But I want to close out by saying thank you again, and everybody to remember, live with purpose and live your truth.
Yeah. You have a great day or night.
Thank you for listening to Transforming with Us. You can like, follow, and share on all major platforms to keep up with all things trans and queer.
You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Apple Music, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more.